Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 51 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers and follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by jazzsports.ag for a 50%. Actually, I believe they have a 100% sign-up bonus right now. Please visit Jazz Sports and use the promo code ODDSBreakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our cost to sponsor the podcast and the website, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com. Click shop and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. Overreaction week is here, my friends, and lots of overreactions happen when it comes to sports betting. This is the kind of week that you got to be careful, all right? People will see something in a narrative that has happened, and just because it happened in week one, they're going to think that this team sucks or this team is amazing, and then they will automatically auto-bet on those teams or auto-fade those bad teams from week one that possibly could create some value for you. You want to watch the lines all the way up until at least an hour before kickoff, right? An hour before kickoff, that thing gets over-adjusted. There's going to be some players coming back just like yourselves anyway. So keep in mind that this is overreaction week, and it's a week that sports bettors love to jump into the mix. We have a great show for you today. Adam Burke from Bang the Book and ATS.io will be coming on to break down NFL Week 2. Both of us are in some Las Vegas contests for the NFL. I'm extremely excited to talk to him about a few games and just to kind of get his thoughts in general. We also are going to go over our free college football plays for the week and some sharp line movements. Before we get into that, huge thanks to the fans that have reached out. We've had a few guys from Wisconsin, my Badger alumni comrades, coming on to thank us for the show. Had some guys from Iowa thank us for the show. Nebraska had some premium subscribers send me some really nice messages. One of them wrote that he's having a great time afternoon. Finally, football's back. Thanking me for what I provide, the work that I put in to this show. You don't know how much that means to me when you send me this stuff. It is so awesome to hear that. It really keeps me going, keeps me getting up earlier, keeps me staying up later, keeps me looking at these lines and trying to just give it the best all I can for you guys to hopefully you can win your bets or at least get some insights from me on some of these games. So thank you guys for reaching out. I love hearing that. And if you listeners have any questions, please feel free. Tweet me, DM me, contact us at the Odds Breakers, oddsbreakers.com, whatever way you want. I would love to bring out your questions on the show. So, the Big Ten is back in order.
Winning.
And we have to thank schools like Nebraska for turning up the pressure on the Big Ten. They decided to use that antigen test that's been around for a while. And obviously looking at all the football that's been played, heck, all the sports have been played. There's high school baseball going on earlier this summer, late spring, and realized that, hey, we're losing out here. Little bit embarrassing for the Big Ten here, but at least they made the right decision. The Pac-12 should be coming up around the corner, but the question is, will these conferences be let into the playoffs? Speculation is that the Big Ten, starting on October 24th, will be allowed in the playoff. It is actually up to all 10 of the FBS commissioners in the playoff committee, including Notre Dame's athletic director, Jack Swarbrick, to determine if the Big Ten is eligible to make the college football playoffs. It's looking like that. The Pac-12, like I said, unfortunately, is on the outside looking in here. But the Big Ten, they gave into pressure, in my opinion, and they did the right thing. They're saying that they have some new cardiac tests because of their myocarditis stuff, and they have that, obviously, the antigen test. To be honest, look, people have been mass gathering in protest since the end of May. People have been playing sports. This thing needed to happen, and it was wrong to cancel it in the first place. I'm kind of surprised that the Big Ten was more looking for excuses not to play than to play. I think that should be investigated by these schools in the offseason. But heck, just happy, at least right now, that they're back. At the same time, they have to be better and look a little bit more respectable. I believe that, in my opinion, their decision did take a hit as a strength of the conference. The Pac-12 especially did, the Big Ten did, compared to other conferences like the SEC, ACC, and Big 12. They took an integrity hit, in my opinion. And if I'm a student, a 5-star recruit, and I'm trying to decide between Alabama and Ohio State, I might be choosing the one that's going to prioritize my future from playing football rather than the other side. So let's get into a little bit of college football plays for this week. We're going to jump right into it here. And one thing I'm going to say before I get into the plays is it still doesn't feel like college football's all the way back until probably next weekend when the SEC starts playing a little bit. And I think obviously once the Big Ten starts rolling, and SEC is right in the heart of their season, we're going to start seeing a lot more excitement coming into college football. So we're going to start right out in the ACC here with one of the better games of the week, in my opinion. We have Boston College versus Duke. Duke's laying about 5.5 points. Total of this game is about 51.5. So this Duke team played Notre Dame tough on Saturday. And they're in the game really at Notre Dame the whole way until the fourth quarter. So Clemson transfer Chase Bryce, and I say Clemson transfer because the caliber he was, threw for modest 259 yards but no interceptions in kind of tough field conditions, right? A little bit wet. Boston College, on the other hand, is a little bit more of an unknown to me. Right now we see Duke, and I don't want to overreact too much to Duke, but I was low on Boston College coming into the year, if you remember. I believe we took them under their win total. Ironically, Boston College starting quarterback was playing in Notre Dame the last couple of years, but he was under Ian Book. He transferred in, and Phil Jurkovec. He came in with a lot of hype to Notre Dame, right? He's a dual-threat quarterback from Pennsylvania, 4-star recruit. He came in because of eligibility, I think. Ian Book decided to stay that year, and he's like, well, I can get an extra year if I transfer. So he made the right decision there. Get to start this year. But let's get into the handicap here. My key to this handicap at 5.5 points is 3 things. First, Duke has consistency at coach with David Cutcliffe, while Boston College has a brand new coach in Jeff Hafley, right? And he was a great defensive coach for the 49ers, cornerbacks coach, and he was an assistant defensive coach at Ohio State last year, if you remember. But coming in, brand new coach to Boston College, changed the scheme, not a ton of time to put their ducks in a row. Secondly, Boston College has a terrible defense last year. Terrible. They allowed 6.3 yards per play, while Duke last year only allowed 5.3. Boston College's offense was a little bit better, but they lost their quarterback, obviously, Brown, and they have Jurkovec. Third, I have Duke power rated slightly higher, over 5 points better than Boston College, and Jeff Sagarin has it about 6 points better. So this doesn't include home field. I'm going to give them about 2 points for home field, a little bit over. So with home field advantage, I think I have this around 7.25, right? Now, the one thing I will say is that if this number does get past 7 for any reason, I'm going to be probably buying back on Boston College, right? And that's just because Jurkovic does have a lot of upside. I like it at 5.5 here for Duke on the side here. I just feel like it's a touchdown game. They can win by a touchdown. But I would definitely consider, if it gets past 7, buying back on it, right? This is more like of a line move type play. I'm thinking the public's going to jump in on Duke here and possibly, grab them early, and then this line could get overbought. I might be wrong. The line hasn't moved much at all yet, but I'm still waiting on that. So I'm going to put 2 stars on Duke at minus 5.5 points for those 3 reasons only. It's a free play. That's what we're giving out for that one. Next play I like a lot. Miami versus Louisville. Louisville's laying about 2.5 points at home. Total in this game is 64.5. Chris Felica just tweeted out something really interesting about Miami. Obviously, he's a Miami fan and alumni. So when he tweets out something about Miami, especially if it's somewhat negative, I tend to want to listen to him. He says, dating back to 2005, Miami is 3-23 away from home versus ranked teams. That's pretty bad. The 3 W's came from West Virginia in 2016 in the Russell Athletic Bowl and at Duke in 2015. And he says Florida State in 2009. So terrible Miami, 3-23 away from home. This is a different Miami team though, right? Transferred De'Aaron King is a stud. He proved it last week. He can use his legs. He thrives on pace. Miami has really kicked up the pace big time this year, okay? Big time to match De'Aaron King's skills. So he knows how to wear a defense out. And he has like the Lamar Jackson type burst, right? And decision making. He knows kind of when to tuck it and run. So the Hurricanes ran 80 plays last week against slow-ass playing UAB. They are able to run all over UAB. But speaking of the run, Louisville can't stop the run, at least if you throw out their game against Western Kentucky, smaller school. Last year, they allowed 5.37 yards per carry on the ground and a total of 6.33 yards per play. Louisville put up 35 points last week against Western Kentucky in 3 quarters, right? So they can put up some points. They have a good quarterback there, but the good news is that I'm not even taking a side. I'm taking the total on this game. I'm taking it over, and I gave it out at 62, and it's at 64.5, and I still like it for 2 stars at least at 64.5. We're going to take the over Miami versus Louisville. The weather's looking like it should hold up, and I expect a fast-paced, high-flying game.
You want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountains?
Next game, we have the Navy Midshipmen versus Tulane, -7. Tulane's favored at home. The total on this game is 48.5. This is where I'm going into the massive overreaction. Navy versus BYU was awful, and they looked horrible against BYU. But we have to remember that the Fighting Mormons are almost like a Power 5 team out there in Utah. They get some good recruits. They beat USC last year. I mean, they're good. Yeah, they're a good team. I as a Power 5 school, they beat Wisconsin a couple years ago. Hated that. I wouldn't want to play them. But Navy was a force last year, and they really hurt by losing quarterback Malcolm Perry. But now that they have their feet wet a little bit, played a much better team, I expect some improvement out of this. I expect them to shed some of those stupid early rusty mistakes that they have by not playing together as a team, right? Tulane, on the other hand, has a lot of changes themselves. They only rank 122nd out of 130 teams in returning production. That's 8th worst in the nation, right? And they also have a new quarterback this year too. In the last 3 years, this Tulane versus Navy game has been decided by 3 or less points. 3 points or less. Okay. So I only have Tulane by 2 points here. And I think that they were not that impressive against South Alabama. They had to come back that game against a lesser conference and a lesser team in South Alabama. I'm taking the Navy midshipmen plus 7 points, and I'm definitely going to sprinkle that money line, if you know what I mean. All right, and those are my college football free plays for the week. If you want to get our premium plays, please become a subscriber at the Odds Breakers. Click shop. Now, let's bring on our guest, Mr. Adam Burke from ATS.io. And now I'm very happy to bring back a man who's been a huge influence of mine in the podcasting of sports betting world. You know him from his relentless work over at Bang the Book and now ATS.io. I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Adam Burke from ATS.io. You can follow him on Twitter at Skating Tripods. Adam, it's football season, my man. How's your week going?
I'll tell you what, man, I don't remember being this busy. I mean, I know that the sports calendar is pretty relentless for those of us that are in this industry, but you know, all the overlap of the NBA and the NHL and Major League Baseball with the shortened season, there's a lot of stuff going on to be sure, but you know, it's certainly better than what we had over the spring and summer, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I totally get it. I was reminded on how busy it is. I just realized I spent the whole Sunday afternoon doing my power ratings and preparing for the Monday show. I'm like, oh my God, holy cow, this is nuts. And working until the night, but it's what we love. And I'm a little bit excited. So it's great to listen to you over there at ATS and Bang the Book, obviously, and all the places that you put great content, and really appreciate you coming back on, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
So, little bit of excitement that came our way here, you being the Ohio State Buckeyes fan, I'm a Badger fan. The Big Ten is back, and they're going to, it sounds like they're going to start October 24th. It looks like they're going to be in the playoff contention, which is something huge for Ohio State. Not so sure that Rutgers fans are going to shed any tears over that or anything. But do you think that this way was always in the option in the university chancellor's minds? Do you think that this was completely on the table, or do you think that they gave into pressure?
I think it's difficult to say. I mean, you know, I think that what we've seen here so far with the success of the bubbles pretty much across every sport, you know, the NFL, not a single positive test last weekend. The NBA has obviously gotten it done. The NHL has gotten it done. Those, of course, more centralized, the NBA and the NHL. But Major League Baseball, for the most part, has gotten by. I mean, you saw the Cardinals and the Marlins have big rashes of outbreaks early on. Since then, you've had, you know, a false positive here or there. You've had, Daniel Mengden from the A's actually tested positive, but through contact tracing, through quarantining him right away, they missed, I think it was, 4 or 5 days worth of games and then came back. So I think the Big Ten has just kind of realized that, you know, everybody else has been able to do this. There are some teams in college football that are doing this. We need to do this. You know, you start talking about the future implications here of, you know, recruiting. Athletes in high school that are either playing their senior years or not, you know, they're not seeing the Big Ten right now. So you could fall behind some of those schools that you're fighting with in terms of recruits. But it always comes back to money. It forever and always will. And a lot of athletic departments are cutting programs. A lot of schools are cutting faculty. And there was probably some pressure from above, from the chancellors, from the trustees, from the donors, stuff like that, to say, look, you know, we got to make money here. And the way to do that is by playing football, by fulfilling those television contracts that you have. The Big Ten was always going to play. It was a matter of when, and I'm excited to see it here in the fall. And, you know, of course, I'm very excited being an Ohio State fan because this may be the best team they've had in my lifetime, and they've been very, very good several other years. But, I mean, this is one where they've got a very, very legitimate shot at making it back to the playoff or the national championship game. They've been at the forefront of this, and when you've got a titan of the conference that's out front trying to push for this, it's only a matter of time until it actually happens.
Right, it is. And I'm not sure if the chancellors knew that, though. They seem to try to recruit the other conferences before they push the button. They already were in motion to push the button, and they found out that they weren't getting anything. They were kind of just seeing what would happen. The thing about the Big Ten that I think they took a hit to the SEC again, and maybe the ACC and the Big 12. I think it is because the Big Ten didn't seem to fight to try to find a way. They were more for the last 2 months trying to find more ways not to do it. And a lot of people didn't speak up. And literally it took other sports being extremely successful while they're just sitting back watching TV and probably getting pressure from a lot of people, the boosters, a lot of certain media. Not obviously the mainstream media wasn't, but there's certain media. And I'm not going to speculate about anything like that. But I am concerned about what happened. So I'm happy that we're getting our Big Ten back, man. As a Badger fan, I always hope for the best. But at the same time, I'm still a little bit of annoyed why it took so long. And there's a lot of unanswered questions there, Adam.
Well, I think, too, and, we could obviously have a long discussion. I know how you feel about COVID-19, and you know how I feel with some of the discussions that we've had, off air in the past here. You think about the Big Ten, and really it's about as purple of a conference as it gets. You've got, a lot of Republicans in Congress, in governor roles, stuff like that. But you also have a lot of Democrats in governor roles and in Congress and all those types of things. Whereas, ACC, SEC country, it's not as purple. It's certainly shaded a different color. And of course, out west with the Pac-12, that's shaded a different color too. So, the Big Ten, I think that, this was going to be, pardon the pun, a political football early on in the process because you had people on both sides. You had universities that slanted one way or another. You had chancellors and other decision makers that slanted one way or the other. It was just going to be a square peg in a round hole, the whole time. And then when nobody else followed suit with them, that is sort of when their tune changed a little bit. And it's a shame. I mean, we know that college football is not about the athletes. It never will be. It's always about the bottom line. But you had a lot of people in this whole, in this whole scenario that wanted to be proven right, that, maybe football wasn't a good idea here in the Great Lakes, in the Near Plains, stuff like that. But as other schools and other conferences are figuring it out, I the Big Ten did kind of have their hand forced a little bit. But that was probably going to be the way it was going to shake out the whole time. So, again, they were trying to play both sides of the fence there to some degree, decided that they couldn't, went to one side of the fence, and wound up being pretty much on their own over there. So they decided to jump the fence. And, we'll see what happens. They do have some very strict protocols in place. I mean, the 5% test rate thing, if a team has a positive test rate over 5%, they got to shut it down. And to me, that seems like a relatively low percentage. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with the Big Ten. We'll see if that, alleged second wave comes in the fall and all these types of things. But, I think that the Big Ten was hoping that they would be kind of a trailblazer here. And instead, they just kind of, wound up taking themselves out of the equation, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And they're saying, and they're being very strict, like you said. Now, I don't quite understand the 5% rule. Is that per team? 5%?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And they shut down the team for 2 weeks or the whole season?
I guess it's 2 weeks or, they're saying, if you get COVID-19, it's 21 days until you can come back. So maybe on a team level, it's 21 days. I think there's a lot of, small print, so to speak, that's going to come to light here. With this vote and with this agreement. But I did see, some of the chatter on Twitter was that, who knows how this is really going to go here with, some of these protocols and some of these low thresholds.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. A virus can run through something and it's impossible to stop sometimes. But at the same time, you look at the hospitalization rate and it's extremely low. I saw a figure where there's nobody. No faculty or college students out of all these colleges that had thousands of people get it were hospitalized. So a lot of head scratchers there. And one thing they did say was Miami, for Miami, for example, had fans in their game, right? Because there was a schools, I think, had a certain amount of fans. NASCAR's got fans. They said specifically they're not going to have any fans for the year, right? And I think that's kind of just something that they try to say to prove their point for canceling it. Kind of like they don't want to admit they're wrong type thing. I think they made a strong stance like that just to try to save some face. So obviously I'm speculating and probably ranting a little bit. But at the same time, I want to see this thing back. Everybody's sick of 2020. We're ready for some football, Adam.
Yeah, we definitely are. And I think, too, one of the things that will kind of come to light here is, they're talking about having this antigen test, something that can, I guess, give you an idea that a player has COVID before they even become contagious. And you're talking about all these medical advancements and this and that. I mean, I don't know what's real. I don't know what's not. That's pretty much been the case, over the last 6 months of dealing with this thing. But it does sort of feel like, as you said, they're still trying to draw this line in the sand with no crowd, with saying, well, we were worried about, myocarditis and all these types of things. But now we actually have the equipment to test for it. And I saw somebody who was an SEC reporter go, you mean you didn't to begin with? So, I don't know. But I guess the bottom line is they're back and they're going to give it a try. And just another set of 14 teams we at the power rate here.
Yep, exactly. A few more teams, add them to the pile here. So we have a little over a month to prepare, but it still doesn't quite feel like college football is back until the Big Ten, at least until the SEC comes back. So I'm still looking forward to that, having a little bit of fun on Saturdays. Well, let's get into a little bit of NFL, Adam. Looks like the offensive pass interference flags in the Cowboys game and the Bengals game were game-changing calls. So after ref ball week 1, how are we going to handicap or make adjustments for this? Is it possible? It just seems to be more unclear officiating.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of comes with the territory, I guess. There were a couple of these big OPI calls, but also only 15 offensive holding penalties in week 1. There were 64 of those in week 1 last year. So, maybe offensive pass interference is the league mandate. We always sort of wonder about that. What is the message to these officiating crews at the start of a season across all sports? But maybe in the NFL here, it's, hey, we got to call OPI more. Or, maybe it'll be something else here as we go forward. There needs to be some more clarity, certainly. But I also think that, the hand fighting and all the things that happen as two guys are kind of chasing downfield, let them play. I mean, I think that's the best way really to go about it, is to just sort of let them play. I mean, I think the pick plays, those are something that maybe you want to talk about a little bit here as we go forward. But again, that's very subjective as well. So I don't know what we do from a handicapping standpoint differently. I don't think that there's anything that we can do differently. Maybe from a live betting standpoint, if you see that you've got kind of a flag happy crew or something like that. But, it's not as cut and dry as umpiring in Major League Baseball, where you've got a guy that calls balls and strikes a certain way. It. Everybody knows it. I think the officiating is just going to continue to be relatively inconsistent, and it just something that kind of comes with the territory.
Yep. And I would like some descriptions of what's supposed to be and what it's not. The thing about the AJ Green one is we've seen this a million times happen without it being called. And then now you decide to call it at the very end of and change the game for the Bengals. Thank God I didn't have a side on that one. That was an ugly one. I don't know who would have bet that one, but I've seen it happen, and it doesn't get called, and now it gets called there. You got to call it like that all the time then, right? Now what happens in that play is, especially when they're playing a little bit more press, the receiver purposely runs into the cornerback, jams him, and then gets his separation. The cornerback can't do anything about it for that 0.5 seconds, and during that 0.5 seconds, the ball is arriving to AJ Green. I've always complained about that, but now they call it, and you haven't before. I want to see some consistency there, right? I completely agree with you with the hand check. They have hands. It's an instinct, right? You touch each other, you're bumping. You can't just run without your arms, your arms to the side. I think maybe before the catch is made, you can't make that extension like Gronk used to do with his 10-foot arms in the past for so many years. I think maybe that's where you enforce it. But that one with the Cowboys, I thought that the Rams, what's his name, got a huge contract over there, cornerback. I think
Ramsey.
Yeah, Ramsey. I thought he grabbed the arm, right, and then after he grabbed the arm, he pushed him off, and so that was a little bit strange to me, and that changed it for the Cowboys a little bit. That was an interesting game. A lot of sharp money was on the Rams, actually, so good for the people that picked the Rams. I almost did, but didn't quite get there. Well, that's great. So we have a little contest that both of you and I share this year, and it's the Circa Sports Million. 3,148 entries. It broke the threshold of being, well, let's just say they don't have an overlay and have to pay any of their own money out, minus overhead, I guess. That was extra 148 entries there. I'm shocked it got there. There was like 933, I think, when I signed up, probably less than 2,000 when you did. And now you're looking at the Westgate. And the Westgate, I think, had 3,500-ish last year, and they are now at 1,172 signups for the Super Contest. You know, I cannot believe that it looks like the Circa might be taking over here. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are there. Has the Circa now overpassed the Westgate Super Contest in popularity, or maybe in respectability? I guess that's two different questions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, from a popularity standpoint, Circa Sports is all the rage out there. They got operations up in Colorado. I know the Superbook does too, but Circa's just getting a much larger market share here, I think, in terms of mainstream media coverage. So people are very aware of the Circa Sports Million. And the thing that's interesting about this is, as you said, when you were out there under 1,000, when I was out there, I think there was 1,700 or so. And I was talking with my proxy and another guy who had signed up with my proxy out there. And, we were like, we'll probably put the over under about 2,300, 2,400, something like that. I was out there September 1st. I think I signed up for it. Of course, the NFL season beginning September 10th, first NFL Sunday on the 13th. And we're thinking, maybe 600 or 700 more. And all of a sudden they blow right through the overlay. And I think that what it speaks to here, I think there are two things, really. One is it's a rake-free contest. The entire entry fee is put back into the prize pool. Unlike the Westgate Supercontest, where they take an 8% admin fee as the rake, so 92% of your entry goes into the prize pool, people aren't going to give up that 8% if they don't have to. And now there's a competitor to the Super Contest. The other thing is that the Circa's $500 cheaper. And I think, given the uncertainty here of this NFL season, the uncertainty from over the summer with people, maybe losing their jobs or being laid off or whatever else, they wanted to get in something, so they'll do the one that's $500 cheaper. And you certainly can't fault them for that, especially with all of the uncertainty here for this NFL season. So I think it's a price point thing. I think it's a rake thing. And I think that moving forward, as you said, Derek Stevens doesn't have to let any money out of his pocket now because they got over the overlay. Well, next year will be the first full NFL season with the new Circa Resort property in downtown Las Vegas with that massive, enormous, I can't wait to see it sportsbook. Maybe next year the prize pool is guaranteed $4 million. Maybe it's $5 million.
Right.
I don't know. But if we don't have COVID, they'll probably get over the overlay for that too. So I think the Circa has most definitely passed the Super Contest by now, and we'll see if the Super Contest is willing or able to make the adjustments. But it took, maybe it took the pandemic, maybe it took something else, but I don't think it's a great sign for the Super Contest going forward that they've already been passed by.
I wonder if they saw the writing on the wall too. That hotel looks so cool. The construction was almost done, right? And looked at that thing and being right down.
Let's put it this way. I got a bachelor party there next May for my best friend's the best man, and we're already talking about, making reservations for the steakhouse. And we're already talking about getting a cabana for the pool. The excitement for that property is just off the charts ridiculous. And we're not even going to sit in, I may sit in the sports book for a while, but, this isn't a group that's going to sit in the sports book all day and, watch, I think the bachelor party's in May, so we're not going to sit there and watch baseball all day. But everybody is excited about that place. And it's going to draw so much attention, whereas the Westgate, I mean, it's off the strip. The book is awesome, don't get me wrong, but there's really no other draw to going over there at all. Whereas Circa is just going to be, this monstrosity downtown that everyone's going to flock to. Yeah, I don't know how the Super Contest competes, starting next year on. I just don't see it.
I don't either. And then you wonder what's going to happen there. That is some great points. Why would you need to be in a sports book when you have a 115-foot, whatever it is, TV screen, I think that's the number, in your pool with small TVs around, cabanas, when it's already set up and you have an app that you can live bet on, instead of have to go down and get your ticket like the old way we have to do it, Adam. I mean, it sounds like pools are the new sports book to me, man.
One of the things that we've my friends and I have sort of bitched about is, just how corporate so many things in Vegas feel nowadays. And, you think about the Strip, and really it's all Caesars and MGM. You got a couple of spots here and there that, still feel corporate, but maybe not to the conglomerate level as, a Caesars or an MGM. Westgate, I mean, it was the old Las Vegas Hilton. And I know Hilton's a giant corporation too, but there was a history to that building. There was a history to that property. And now that it's Westgate, and I don't think this is any fault of theirs necessarily, it doesn't feel the same. But when you think about Vegas, you think about Fremont Street specifically, you think Derek Stevens. You think about that guy sitting at the long bar in the trenches, so to speak, bullshitting with the patrons, getting drunk with the patrons, all of that. That guy just, he oozes charisma and personality. And I want to go lose money at the D. I want to go lose money at Golden Gate. If I'm going to lose it, I want to lose it to Derek Stevens, as crazy as that sounds. And I think that, this new property is just going to take that up so many more notches. There's just something about that guy and something about what he does. I mean, you think about, the early stages of the pandemic when Vegas was reopening, and they bought a bunch of one-way flights to try and get people out to Vegas, try to kickstart the city a little bit. I mean, I'm always going to support that. I mean, it's my favorite place in the world to go, Las Vegas, and Derek Stevens gets it. And I've heard that from people that know him personally. I've heard that from people that have met him at Long Bar. He just gets it. And I think that, we kind of see that both with the development of Circa Sports and then also with the excitement that's coming with this new property.
100%. Cannot wait to check that out. It seems like Old Town Vegas is going to be the new hotspot. All right, man, let's move into some NFL games then. And Adam, what's funny about this week? You have a lot of very good teams on the road here. And the Ravens are on the road at Houston, the Chiefs at LA Chargers, the 49ers at the Jets, the Patriots are playing at Seattle, the Saints are playing at the Raiders. I mean, the books must be loving this. Have you noticed how much road firepower we have to pick in our contest?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that, what we're going to wind up coming down to this week across the contests is a lot of people are going to have some very ugly cards here. And they're going to hope that, those home underdogs wind up coming through. And, I mean, there are several ugly home dogs that I'm taking a look at here this week already. But, it's definitely one of those weeks where, we've got several big road favorites in that, 6-7 range. And, I don't know. I guess we'll see how it all plays out.
Between 6 and 9, they seem to all be. It just blows my mind. It's like, wow. And it's just so intriguing to think about it. I find myself staring at the line sometimes a little bit. But, it just makes you want to dig a little bit deeper and look at history, man. Well, there's a little bit of history between these two franchises. We have the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are laying about 6 points. The total in this game is about 43.5 when I wrote this down for this podcast. I'll let you do the honors here, Adam, being you a Cleveland Browns fan.
Yeah, reluctantly, I guess I would say. I'm, just kind of born into that one. I don't know if I want to, take too much pride in that.
Being
one,
a Bears fan, I think we can relate a little bit.
Well, at least you guys got a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I mean,
one.
That helps. Well, it's one more than the Browns have.
And they're still living off that. The 85 Bears are still Super Bowl shuffling in Chicago, and they get all the publicity. I think the next Super Bowl might hurt them a little bit from a marketing standpoint, but it was years ago. A lot of Bear fans weren't even alive then, bud.
Yeah, well, with Mitch, I don't think you have to worry about it here anytime soon. But speaking of not worrying about things anytime soon, the Browns didn't look good last week. And I understand that Baltimore is probably the best team in the AFC. I think a lot of people like Baltimore to get over that hump and win the Super Bowl after last year's playoff disappointment. So I'm trying to figure out how much stock I want to put in just how bad the Browns looked last week. But you wonder here on a short week with a first-year head coach, with all the injuries that they still have in the secondary, do things get better this week? I don't know if they get better to the point where this team can win by a touchdown or more. Baker doesn't look great. Odell seems unhappy again. They weren't able to use Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt last week because they wound up trailing for so much of the game. But on the other hand, how do you take Cincinnati here? How do you take a young head coach in Zach Taylor? How do you take Joe Burrow in his first road start on a short week with, albeit 6,000 people there? It's not going to be that loud, but still, you're still trying to get up to NFL speed. You didn't have the preseason to, sort of help you to that point. I have no idea what the hell to do with this game. I think that, from a situational standpoint, sharp players are going to bet the Browns. They're going to fade the rookie quarterback on the short week. And the Browns have a lot of talent, and they have a high ceiling. But do they get there this week? I have no earthly idea. This is my least favorite game on the board because I can form a narrative for either team, and I can talk myself into believing it. But ultimately, I don't know if the Browns are good enough to win by a touchdown, and I don't know if the Bengals in this bad spot and with some of their talent deficiencies are good enough to keep this thing close.
Well, I was hoping you'd say that because I feel the same with Bears games. It's really hard for me to pick a side when it comes to that. I try to avoid them sometimes if I'm not just fading the Bears, but that's just human nature there for me anyway. I'm taking the Browns here, and I took them at 5.5, and that's when I gave it out to some of our members. But it's at 6, and I still kind of like it for a free play here. I like it. Probably, I'm not sure if I like it at 6.5, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. Cleveland did put up on over 300 yards against the Ravens, and I know some of that might have been some garbage time, but the Ravens outgained them by 71 yards. Cleveland was more average to me last year compared to their record. I'm not sure they were really 6-10 type team. I know Football Outsiders disagrees. I think they have them 21 from last year, but to me, I just think a lot of things didn't go their way. They had a hard schedule. Cincinnati has the worst offensive line in football, at least from last year. And I didn't see them do a lot in the offseason to fix it. The Chargers were one of my big fade teams coming into this year. I thought that a lot of people saying, their turnovers will get fixed. They have Tyrod Taylor. I was not buying the Chargers. I did not like how they don't have a decent running back there. I know they have some good defensive line. I don't like the Derwin James injury. I don't like the way Joey Bosa's been acting. I don't like their offensive line that much. I'm just not into the Chargers. And so I'm not giving the Bengals a lot for that game, for almost winning that game. And maybe a lot of people are, and that's why this line is here. I think the Browns are just going to look to bounce back and just floor it to somebody. They have the talent there to do that, right? Conklin's a little bit banged up. I think he's going to play. I'm not so sure about Wills yet. I hope he does. But the Browns, the reason I don't want to go up to 7 is because the Browns just signed the double doink Cody Parkey as kicker. And as a Bears fan, you know how well I despise that guy. I guess from a fan standpoint, I'd never say something personally, but yeah. I mean, he's just that guy. He left the Bears on bad terms. He had some bad things to say, and he's never impressed me. He never seemed to hit it completely in the middle of the uprights here. I guess he's a capable kicker, but now he's going to have more pressure on him because he's in Cleveland, and everyone's going to be waiting for him to miss, right? The Njoku injury hurts the Browns a little bit, but the fact that they have Austin Hooper, I like that. I like their backs. I like Chubb. I like Hunt, their offensive line. Baker, we've seen him flash. We've seen him beat the Ravens. We've seen what he can do at times. And this just feels like one of those times that the Browns put the pedal to the metal here. My power ratings have the Browns by about 7.5 points. So for me, I'm taking the Browns, and this might be a contest play. Any final thoughts?
Well, I think it's hard to take it for the contest, obviously, because, we've got a lot of really key injuries in the NFL once again this week, and you got to have all 5 plays in, as you know, if you want to play that Thursday night game.
Right.
I don't know if Baker is the guy. And I understand that it's very easy to make excuses for him because, he's had the 4 different head coaches and all of his starts and this and that. But, when I watch him, there are a lot of throws that he misses. There seem to be some footwork issues there with him. And look, he even mentioned it last week. He's like, look, I didn't trust my offensive line because last year I was kind of running around quite a bit. I found out that I could trust my offensive line this time. And okay, fine. Maybe that's the case. And maybe he doesn't get, those happy feet and start leaving the pocket too early and this and that this week. But I don't think he's the guy. I mean, I know that there's the knock on his size and all that, but I just don't think he throws a good enough football. I just don't think he puts it where he needs to put it. The interception certainly suggests that as well. I don't think he's the guy. And he'll get every chance possible this year in year 1 with Stefanski and every chance possible next year too, I would imagine. But I'm not going to be surprised if the Browns are drafting a quarterback in 2022. They won't do it in next year's draft because, well, it's at home and they can't very well do that. But when this thing rolls back around to Vegas in 2022, I wouldn't be shocked if at that point in time the Browns kind of say, you know what, maybe Baker just isn't it.
All right. Well, I am Luke. I guess I'm still a little lukewarm on him, but the biggest thing for me is like you look at Lincoln Riley, and maybe that was the reason he was so good, right? And that's probably what you're thinking a little bit too. He looked awesome at Oklahoma, right? And could be all Lincoln Riley right there. So good points there. I just still think the Bengals are that team that you have to fade with new quarterbacks there. Obviously, they have new defense, new skill positions. I can't stand their offensive line. So I do like this play, but only up to 6. It's a free play probably for a star or 2. Next game we have Denver versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this line moved up, Adam. You could have got this if you like Pittsburgh at -6 on Sunday night. Monday morning, the Steelers go ahead and throttle the inept New York Giants. And that thing moves through a couple key numbers here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, as I look at this one, I like Denver a little bit. I mean, I know both of these teams on the short week here, Denver with the long travel out to the Three Rivers area. I get it. And I also understand that Vic Fangio, the returns on him last week were not stellar at all. And, I mean, look, he deserves all the criticism that he's getting. There's no question about that. And Mike Tomlin is generally regarded as a pretty decent head coach. I know that he was kind of on the ropes there with his job security maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but he's generally regarded as a pretty trustworthy guy in the betting markets. So I think optics have driven this line up. I mean, look, nobody really expects a whole lot from the Giants, and Pittsburgh did what they were supposed to do. Tennessee is supposed to be a very good team, and yeah, they would have covered if Gostkowski could make some field goals, but I thought Denver played pretty well overall in that game. So I think this line has gotten too high at the 7.5. Perfect teaser candidate on Pittsburgh, by the way. Take them through 7, through 3, low total game. Perfect Wong teaser there with Pittsburgh in this one. But I think this line's too high. I don't know if I can take Denver in the contest, but it is on my short list here of games as we're a few days out.
Yeah, and Denver's got some. Well, they had some injury woes, obviously. A couple receivers didn't play last game, Cortland Sutton and KJ Hamler. Obviously, Hamler's new and came from Penn State. Losing Von Miller a week or two before the season started must have been just a crusher for them. Philip Lindsay's got turf toe. I guess Royce Freeman's fine, but just something to think about there. Lindsay's not in. It's going to be a lot of Melvin Gordon. going from 6 to 7.5, that's about a 35-cent move through there. So I lean Denver. My power ratings have Denver losing by 5 points. So I'm on your side here, Adam. But I agree. It's hard to take them in this situation. Denver was 4-4 against the spread on the road last year, in the closing line, of course. But they're 6-3 following a loss, which is nice. Pittsburgh's 5-3 ATS at home, even with those terrible quarterbacks there with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. So Pittsburgh, good at home. I'm gonna lean Denver right now, and I'm gonna wait till the injury report comes on for James Conner and a couple of those Denver receivers. I think that's the best thing to do, is wait a little bit on that.
The last thing I'll say, I mean, look, it's a big number, and Ben didn't look great against the Giants. I mean, he didn't get a whole lot of great offensive line play either. But, I mean, Mason Rudolph had his helmet on the sideline. Ben was taking a little bit of a beating. Wasn't super accurate. I mean, he wound up with some pretty decent numbers overall, but there wasn't a whole lot of home run ability from that offense. And, again, with a number like 7.5, you're probably going to need some big plays here and there from Pittsburgh. I don't know if Ben can do that right now with how he looked last week.
Not to mention the back door is going to be open too for Denver, obviously, towards the end of that game. With 7.5, you always got to be wondering about that. No, great call. Nick Chubb didn't do anything against the Titans, and I'm hoping he does. He was a top draft pick a couple years back, and I think he was completely shut down, no tackles, no nothing really. So I'm curious about that. Denver did put a decent show against the Titans on the front line in the trenches. A decent show, I thought. So we'll see what happens here with this baby. Let's move on to a game of two teams that were hyped up. Obviously, they were favorites, and then they both lose outright here. The Minnesota Vikings versus the Indianapolis Colts, and the Colts are -3. The total on this game is 48. I have a few quick things to say. This game, I cannot believe how bad Indianapolis out-yardaged the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, right? I mean, I think Jacksonville was second lowest yard total. I think it was like 240 or something, and they ended up winning this game, right? So huge misleading final score there. Can't remember exactly offhand what it was in my misleading final score article I'm sending out today. But the Vikings lost a ton on defense. They're Linval Joseph, Trey Wayans, Stephen Weatherly, Everson Griffin, Andrew Sendejo, Xavier Rhodes. I mean, we saw a defense full of rookies. I mean, they had a ton of draft picks, but they don't always come out. And that's why the Packers just completely picked them apart. Aaron Rodgers could not be stopped, and they had just a bunch of great plays. Matt LaFleur looked very, very competent as a coach to me. I love some of those plays. Some of those plays remind me of some 49er plays and some of the Sean McVay plays, maybe when LaFleur was with the Rams, right? So I think this is going to be high scoring. It's going to be on the turf. It's going to be in a dome. I can definitely see the Colts putting up some points, but for some reason, Kirk Cousins at this time slot, 1 p.m. Eastern, there's some stat on it, like crazy, like 70, 80% against the spread. I can't remember what it is. I have to look it up. But Kirk Cousins is very good at that time, and he was at that time last week, and he put up points. Kirk Cousins threw the ball, Thielen got a bunch of touchdowns. He can put up points. So I'm liking the over 38 here, and I'm going to play over 40 or over 48 for a couple stars here. But as far as the side, I got the Colts -2.75. So really close to -3, and I don't know how I'm going to get talked into this one.
Well, I actually like the under in this game. So we got a difference of opinion here on this one. And one of the reasons why is because I've been looking a lot at, some of the coaches' quotes here and what we've kind of seen from some of these guys going from week 1 to week 2. And Frank Reich has mentioned 4 or 5 times here this week in his media availability, I need to call more run plays. We need to run the ball more. We need to run the ball more. I think we should run the ball more. I think we need to establish our running game. All these things about running the football after Phillip Rivers wound up hanging 360 on Jacksonville. So he wants to run the football. And I think that plays right into Minnesota's defensive hands because their back seven, as you mentioned already, was ravaged by guys that they lost in free agency and trade and all these kinds of things. So I'd be looking to throw the ball on them. And maybe it's some gamesmanship from Frank Reich. I don't know. I guess that's a possibility. But he's insistent that they're going to run the football this week. And Kirk Cousins last week put up some good numbers, but let's be honest here. He was 12 of 14 in the fourth quarter for 164 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 first downs. They had 3 first downs passing over the first 3 quarters of that game. So Kirk Cousins put a lot of garbage time yardage up there on the board for Minnesota. I don't think he played as well as that final score would suggest. So you also have 2 defenses that were embarrassed last week. I mean, Indianapolis could not cover. Gardner Minshew only had the 1 incompletion. And the Eagles, there's no way in hell Mike Zimmer stands for a performance like that. So I think both of these teams commit to playing defense. I think both of these teams maybe a little bit more vanilla on offense, trying to not expose those defenses as much. I actually like the under. I'm seeing 48.5 out there. I like the under a little bit in this game. And as far as which side that favors, I don't know about that. I think it probably favors Minnesota a little bit here just because they've got, such an established running game with a guy like Dalvin Cook. We don't know what Jonathan Taylor is going to do for the Colts. The offensive line played well last week, but we'll see if they can do that again this week. But I do really dig the under 48.5 here.
All right. Well, the Packers were able to run a little bit against the Vikings last week, but it was a lot of Aaron Rodgers too. So I think this number is going to close at probably close to 50, maybe 49.5. So I would wait on this one. I don't know what your thoughts are. But,
I agree.
But I think we wait on, if you take that, maybe we both win this one. So we'll see what happens there on our little crossfire here. Well, let's move on to the next game then. We have Detroit versus Green Bay. Green Bay minus, I'm seeing about 6. Over under total is 48.5. Did you get a chance to look at this one?
Yeah, this is one I'm really waiting on because I want to see what happens with this Detroit injury report. No Jeff Okudah in week 1, and then they lost 2 defensive backs throughout the course of that game too. And that's why Mitch Trubisky and the Bears were able to come back there in the fourth quarter. Maybe it's also just kind of Matt Patricia's thing, sort of letting teams back in the game here. But I want to see what this injury report looks like for Detroit. I think this line's a little bit high, but this is probably not a game I'm going to have too much interest in unless I see that Detroit is fully ready to go. They get their defensive guys back. They get Golladay back. But it seems like right now, as we're recording here on Wednesday, they're still going to be pretty banged up going into Sunday.
Well, nobody knows how to blow a lead more than the Detroit Lions. And every year, over and over again, they choke at the worst possible times. They're always leading, too. It's just very strange to me. I think that the Lions are a much improved team from last year. I think I have them a little bit better than average. I really like what they did against the Bears. They just choked. Swift missed that touchdown. They should have won. The problem with the Lions is the cluster injuries at cornerbacks. And that's what's taking me out this game. I wanted to bet the Lions this week. Desmond Trufant, like you said, Okudah, missing last game, right? And now nickel corner Justin Coleman's on the injured list with a pulled hammy, the 4-week injured list. That's pretty new to us. So with cluster injuries at corner, I mean, Matt LaFleur would have to know that he's got to attack that position. That's the problem. And it almost makes me flip to the Packers here. But the Packers have a great ATS at home. They are 6-3 against the spread, and it seemed like their advantage at home went up with the officiating. If you ask the Lions from last year, I don't know if you remember that game, but Twitter was abuzz after that Lions-Packers game last year. But as far as a power rank, I have the Packers by 5.5 points. This number's at 6. I just can't bet the Lions for everything I said above there. So I'm going to have to stay away from this one. And I wonder if the total is going to be in play. All right. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans here. Tennessee is laying about 9 points here. Came off the 10 after the Monday Night Football game. The total of this is 43, Adam. What are your thoughts on this, baby?
This is a Tennessee truck. I think Tennessee rolls over Jacksonville here in this game. I think they're not thrilled with how they played at Denver. And of course, look, as we talked about, they could have covered that game if Gostkowski makes a few kicks here and there. But, winning on the road in altitude early in the season is very, very hard to do. I think Brad Powers had the stat on ATS.io radio that Denver was 33-4 in the first 2 weeks of the season straight up in their last 37 games. And Tennessee went on the road and beat them and could very well have covered that number. Fortunately for me in the Circa, Tennessee did not cover that number. I had the Broncos. But I think Tennessee rolls Jacksonville here. I think Jacksonville got lucky winning that game last week. They got lucky being in that game last week. As you mentioned, the yardage, Indianapolis, was I think 440 to 240, 450 to 240, something like that. The Colts never punted in that game and still found a way to lose. So I think that Tennessee, I think they just completely roll Jacksonville here. Tannehill and Henry get going. Jacksonville kind of reverts back to what we thought they'd be. And I'm happy that Tennessee didn't cover last week and that Jacksonville won outright, because this number is probably 11.5 or 12 if those two things don't happen. Instead, I'm seeing 8.5s leak out there in the market. Tennessee big in this game.
I agree 100% with you. And this is overreaction week, right? Jacksonville got very lucky last week, putting up those few yards that they did, somehow winning that game. That is just so Phillip Rivers. Don't even have to punt the whole game, you still lose, right? It just amazes me every year. But this Tennessee missed those field goals last week. This was a misleading score just because of that. Jacksonville is just 9-13 against the spread the last 3 years after a win. And like you said, here's the exact yardage: 445 yards to 241, and they won the game. That blows my mind. Gardner Minshew did play really well, but this is that game that they prepared for the whole year, right? That first game, right? I think it's going to change a little bit with Doug Marrone coming into this week. The Titans are a lot better, especially in the trenches, than Jacksonville is. And Jacksonville just lost a ton of people. They're going to be coming into this week kind of high. And in the back of their minds, they have to know that they don't have any chance of making the playoffs this year. I'm going to take the Titans here, and this is going to be a contest play for me. I really hope that it drops more, Adam. Seeing some of those 8.5s pop are making me smile, because you see it at 10, you see it at 9. You just wonder how many other people are thinking like you, right? And you wonder when the money is going to start coming in at Jacksonville. That's my question, Adam. When do I fire on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to get too much better than where it is now. I think that you're going to have a lot of people that sort of believe the way that we do, both public and sharp alike, because I know there were a lot of sharp people last week that were on the Colts, that were laying that road number with Indianapolis, and the box score played out as if Indianapolis should have won that game and won that game convincingly. So I think this one's just kind of lying in wait. We may end up seeing 10. I don't think we'll get to 10.5, but I think we could very well see 10 by the time this one kicks off Sunday. Yeah,
if this thing doesn't get down to 8 or any lower than 8.5 by tomorrow, then it's going to start moving the other direction is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I might have to fire on it tomorrow. So that's what I'm thinking right now. We'll see what happens here. All right. Well, the final game we have to talk about is New England versus Seattle, and Seattle's laying 4 points. The total on this game is 45. This is a matchup of two winning teams last week. The Seahawks put up 299 yards against the Dirty Birds last week, and they didn't even really utilize their ground game. It seemed to be a lot of Russell Wilson last week. New England was unstoppable on the ground, though. 217 yards against the Dolphins, whom I thought would take a bigger step forward on defense, but they didn't. They added Byron Jones at corner, Kyle Van Noy that played for the Patriots at outside linebacker, Shaq Lawson at the end, Emmanuel Ogbah. The Parker injury didn't help him at all, obviously. That didn't do him any favors. And I confess, one of my only losses last week was the Dolphins. I came up to the last throw from old Fitzmagic there. But my number, to be honest with you, I started low on the Patriots. My number's 6.5, but I haven't bet it. And I'm a little scared that the Seahawks were so outgained last week. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that was really. Atlanta should have won that game really, 500 some yards. I know some of those yards came at the end, and Russell Wilson looked magical. But what really throws me off, Adam, Seattle was third worst against the spread at home last year at 2-6. Now they're not even going to have a crowd at CenturyLink Field there. They're not even going to have a crowd. The Patriots lost some key players last year, and this is kind of why I was down on Patrick Chung, Donta Hightower. And I guess I'm wondering right now, Adam, if your name's not the Miami Dolphins, then can some teams put up some points against the Patriots? So Seattle's throwing more on first and second down, it seems. Their defense isn't that great. And Pro Football Focus ranks the Seahawks dead last in defensive trenches on the defensive line. 32 coming into this year. I didn't see that against the Falcons, but the Falcons can't run the ball anyway. But they seem to handle Gurley pretty well. But that worries me a little bit because if your defensive front is bad against Cam Newton, Cam Newton could dink and dunk all day over you. See, I kind of like the over here. All right, so I kind of like the over 44.5. What are your thoughts?
Well, Matt Ryan's another one, a lot like Kirk Cousins last week. Matty Ice was 19 of 25 for 201 yards in the fourth quarter of that game last week. So, he moved the ball effectively prior to that, but in the fourth quarter wound up throwing for over 2 bills. So that certainly helped the perception of his numbers as far as week 1 goes. 2 things about this game. The first is I don't even know if it's going to get played with the air quality issue out there in Seattle. So there is no way, no how I would play this as a contest pick unless I had assurances that this game was going off, because if it doesn't get played, it goes as a loss. So that is something that I do have filed away in the back of my mind.
Great point.
The other thing is Bill Belichick. I mean, since 2003, he's only been an underdog, 39 times here. 65% cover margin or 65% cover rate as an underdog. I'm not betting Seattle. I'm not betting against Bill Belichick as an underdog. It's just not going to happen. And quite frankly, I think New England's better with Cam Newton than they were with Tom Brady last year. I think you can do a lot more with Cam Newton. Tom Brady can't move. If he can't throw the ball and doesn't have the skill position guys, he's not creating anything. It's sort of the old NBA argument of, can a guy create his own shot or not? I think Cam Newton can create his own plays. And I think they did a very good job scripting quarterback runs for Cam Newton, and Belichick put it on his defense and felt very confident with doing that. So I think in this game, you've got kind of the contrasting styles. Wilson's going to throw it and should have the ability to do so to a degree, and Newton's going to want to run it and extend plays with his legs and all that type of thing. I think this is a fascinating game. Like I said, I don't know if it gets played. I don't know how the players are breathing. I don't know if the second half will be a complete train wreck here, if the air quality is really bad. I wish there weren't those environmental concerns because I'd probably like New England here, but this game's going to wind up being a stay away for me.
Yeah, well, great call about the air quality out here on the West Coast. We've been sneezing and coughing, throat burning, and we're not even that close to LA or California's fires. So it's just a different. In the morning, the sun is red. It's a surreal atmosphere. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I hope that this stuff goes down. The skies have been a little clear these last couple days, so I'm really hoping for that and hoping everybody remains safe here. I'm excited to watch it, and I think this is going to be one we learn about. I think we're going to learn more than we did last week about both of these teams. So I'm going to study this game a bit, and hopefully we can maybe pull some nuggets out for the next following few weeks here. Well, we talked a lot about 6 games, Adam. Are there any others that you want to throw out there for discussion?
Yeah, there's one that I really like, and this is a ship I guess I'm willing to go down with here because I've talked about this one pretty much since Sunday when the week 2 lines kind of settled in and came out. I think this Buffalo line is an overreaction. I think laying 6 on the road at Miami is a little bit too rich. I mean, I understand that Buffalo's got a great defense, and maybe Josh Allen is improving with, some of the improved skill position guys that he's got, like a Stephon Diggs, like the 2-back system that they've got and all that. But I think people are too down on Miami for that performance last week against New England. I think everyone sort of thought the consensus opinion was, well, New England's going to be down without Tom Brady, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think it makes New England even harder to game plan for. So I think Miami going up there, not really knowing what to expect out of that New England team, I think it's kind of soured the perception of the Dolphins a little bit. I'm not a huge Josh Allen guy. I'm not a huge Ryan Fitzpatrick guy, but Miami's better than they played last week, and Buffalo played the Jets, who are the worst team in the NFL. I think 6 is too many here, and Miami probably will be a contest play for me, and maybe that's kind of a contrarian opinion, but I think the Dolphins will play better this week than they played last week.
Yeah, that's a very contrarian play right there. And watching that line's been interesting. We have a low total here at 41, so that does correlate with the dog. So very, very good. Thank you for that pick for our listeners, Adam. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking some pigskin with me. And where can our listeners find some of your great information and plays? I know we discussed ats.io. What kind of stuff are you putting out for football?
Yeah, over at ats.io, we're doing a lot of stuff. I every Monday I'm with Kyle Hunter, who was on your great show here last week. On Thursdays I chat with Brad Powers. On Tuesdays I chat with Brian Blessing, and we do the podcast format. We also convert some of the highlight topics and games into videos over on our ATS YouTube page. Lots of content, lots of good stuff for the legal U.S. sports betting market. The promotions are just exceptional right now with all the different sports books that are out there. So we cover a lot of industry news. We cover a lot of stuff with the sportsbook promotions, but we also have a lot of picks and prediction stuff as well. I've got a U.S. Open preview over there. I'm very much looking forward to watching that for this weekend. Just so much going on over at ats.io. And I am still doing some work for bangthebook.com as well. I wrote up a UFC preview here today. I have a more detailed U.S. Open preview over there. There's a lot of stuff going on, man, like we talked about at the top of today's show. And, I'm covering it at both sites, and following me on Twitter at Skating Tripods is not a bad idea either.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Your work ethic is amazing for what you do for all of us listeners here. Really appreciate all of your insights. Have a great rest of your week and enjoy the games this weekend. All right. And now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.eu. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit uwager and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. All right, college football week 3 sharp action as of Wednesday late afternoon. We're looking at sharp money on Georgia State at plus 17.5, hosted Louisiana. 43% of the tickets on Georgia State, 92% of the money. Letdown spot for Louisiana after beating Iowa State. Western Kentucky minus 13 and minus 14 hosting Liberty. Dual action, 80% of the tickets on Western Kentucky and 92% of the money. Sharp money on Pittsburgh minus 21.5 hosting Syracuse. 60% of the tickets are on Pitt, but 82% of the money. Notre Dame, sharp money at minus 25.5 hosting South Florida. 30% of the tickets on Notre Dame. 69% of the money is on Notre Dame. A 39% difference there, pretty big. Sharp money on Georgia Tech at plus 7.5 hosting UCF. 54% of the tickets on Georgia Tech and 82% of the money. Sharp money on Georgia Southern plus 6 all the way down to minus 1 hosting Florida Atlantic. Huge line move. They had a bunch of COVID issues. Florida Atlantic now has Willie Taggart as a coach and lost a ton of production. 68% of the tickets on Georgia Southern and 92% of the money is on Georgia Southern. North Texas, 14.5 plus 14.5 hosting SMU. 77% of the tickets are on North Texas and 99% of the money is on North Texas. SMU didn't show that good of a defense against Texas State, so that's why that came in. Sharp money on Louisiana Tech plus 5.5 at Southern Miss. We have 55% of the tickets on Louisiana Tech and 78% of the money on Louisiana Tech. Sharp money on Wake Forest from plus 3 down to plus 2 at NC State. 63% of the tickets are on Wake and 98% of the money. Sharp totals, Liberty versus Western Kentucky under 54. 64% of the tickets on the under. 99% of the money is on the under. Boston College / Duke over 50.5 to 51.5. 15% of the tickets on the over, but 80% of the money. It's a 65% difference. Tulsa versus Oklahoma State under 66. 32% of the tickets on the under, but 70% of the money is on the under. They probably don't expect Tulsa to be scoring a lot. I'm not sure about that. Maybe. South Florida / Notre Dame under 52.5 down to 50. 50% of the tickets are on the under, but 99% of the money is on the under there. UFC versus Georgia Tech over 62. 54% of the tickets are on the over, but 86% of the money is on the over. That seems to be a little high. Florida Atlantic / Georgia Southern under 50.5 to 47.5. 29% of the tickets are on the under, and 80% of the money is on the under. Right there. SMU North Texas under 69. 2% of the tickets are on the under, but 36% of the money is on the under. This one kind of bounced around a little bit. Sharp NFL. We have sharp money on the New York Giants plus 5.5 hosting the Bears. 68% of the tickets are on the Giants, but 90% of the money are on the Giants. They are who we thought they were. Broncos plus 7.5 sharp money at the Steelers. 39% of the tickets are on the Broncos, but 59% of the money is on the Broncos. Sharp money on the Jaguars from plus 10 down to plus 8 now. Dual action, 82% of the tickets are on the Jags. 99% of the money is on the Jags. More of a numbers play for me, I think. That's what I think anyway. That's it. Sharp NFL totals. Broncos Steelers under 42 to 41.5. 44% of the tickets on the under, but 86% of the money is on the under. A nice fat 42% there. Washington versus the Arizona Cardinals over 46% to 47.5. Sorry, not percent. Points. 56% of the tickets are on the over, but 99% of the money is on the over. Sharp money on the Ravens versus Texas under 35.5 to 51.5. 47% of the tickets are on the under. 93% of the money is on the under. Sharp money on Chiefs versus Chargers under 50.5 down to 47.5. Pretty big line move there. 49% of the tickets are on the under, but 95% of the money is on the under. And sharp money on the Saints / Redskins under 50.5 to 49.5. 55% of the tickets are on the under, and 92% of the money is on that under. Before we leave, my friends, we will have a UFC on ESPN plus 36 free play for you, and we are going right towards Gerald Meerschaert versus Khamzat Chimaev. And Chimaev, this kid is a beast. I'm excited about this one because he's coming in 8-0. He had 2 UFC bouts. He was in the Brave before. He's from Sweden, right? He hasn't even went to the 3rd round yet. He just beats the shit out of his opponents. He also submits them. He's got 5 KOs, 3 submissions, and he is fighting Gerald Meerschaert, 31-13, who's fought a ton of great opponents. He's a little bit older. Chimaev is 26, Meerschaert is 32, but Meerschaert obviously has a ton of fights on his belt, a ton of them, but he's never really gotten up to tier 2 even, you know. He's kind of been that borderline, I guess maybe he was tier 2 for a while, but he's borderline tier 3 or tier 2. Whenever he fights a medium fighter, he seems to beat him. When he fights kind of like a medium good fighter, he loses, right? He knows how to grapple a little bit. He has 23 submissions, 6 KOs, 2 decisions, but his losses are mostly 8 submissions, 2 KOs, 3 decisions, right? So the way I'm looking at this one is Chimaev, he's the best. I mean, the best in this fight. He's up and coming. Khamzat has been just beating. I watched a couple of his fights. Danny also talked to me a little bit about him. He just beats the crap out of people, right? He's coming in with a lot of hype, but this one, I finally agree with the hype. I mean, the spread on it is massive. We are looking at Khamzat at minus 380 to Meerschaert's plus 315. That's not what we're going to take here. The fact that Chimaev has never went to a round 3, we are taking him to win inside the distance at minus 175. All right. I like this all the way up to minus 210. Now, a lot of these props aren't out yet. You can check out bestfightodds.com. That's where you can kind of see where they're starting to move. You might not be able to take this till Friday, but I really like this inside the distance, and I like it for 3.5 stars. He's going to kick some butt. Going to send out a few other plays to premium subscribers. My friends, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you have a fantastic weekend of watching football, winning your fantasy leagues, and go get some winners.